We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. The next day, the rest of the week, really, for us, we're going to have a taped show here. And I know you're still at work at MTSU. This is Professor John Vile. But 4th of July tomorrow, a lot of people having that day off.
Yes.
Some people working. Certainly the news business will still be on it. But taking phone calls, questions, comments, if you'd like, on Independence Day, national politics, and the like. Let's see. Bernice waited through the break. Good morning, Bernice. Hi, Bernice.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Just doing pretty good, sitting here, just watching your show and everything, and talking about these illegal aliens and stuff. And Congress, our president wanted $5.4 billion to build a fence. How come the Congress just now voted in $5.4 billion to help these people that are in our country, and we could be spending money better by being proactive, because our president said up front that this was going to be a bad issue, and it's become a bad issue.
Yeah,
I wanted to understand that. And you said to the point to a while ago, if we didn't like what you said, to turn the TV off, because we're not. A lot of people don't bleed for these. The children, I understand them, but those are third world people. They're not used to being in a situation of being that way, and being to the place to where we are like they are. They used to being free and roaming. But there's consequences when you do things wrong, and I know I love children to death. But we can't let that be the stopping point for our country to allow these people to influx our nation when we got veterans, we got elderly. I'm disabled, fixing to die. We had 9,000 people to die in this state last year because they didn't get the Medicare.
That's awful.
That's wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you. And listen, make no mistake. My issue's not on how immigration needs to be addressed. Mine's more of a humanitarian issue when I see little children, whether they're illegals coming across or wherever they may be, separated alone in horrible living conditions. We're just better than that. We have to find a better way to deal with it. That was my issue there. And anyone who's okay with seeing little children suffer, there's something wrong with you. And that's separate, in my opinion, from having an issue with immigration. And I'm not saying, well, we have these children, we have to just go ahead and open the gates. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there has to be a better way to address children. And I'm looking at it from a humanitarian aspect of it, be it more resources. And he brings up an interesting point that I think others may be saying. The president has been asking for this money for the wall, and now it seems like Congress is appropriating money to address these folks who are coming across because they would argue there is no wall, and now we have to pay for them. And his point, I think, is a good one. Well, we could have been more proactive. What do you think? Does that connect for you?
The one thing that I would say, first of all, is there's a solid legal and moral principle that you don't punish children for the faults of their parents.
Yeah, that's
so that takes us to the other. I personally have my doubts as to the effectiveness of a wall. Even if we had started building it, we would still be having the current influx. You can stand at the seashore and command the waves not to come, but there are both pressures that pull people here, largely our economy and our freedoms, and there are also pressures that are pushing people out of Central America, which tend to be drugs and gang violence and unemployment and very repressive regimes. And as long as you have those, in the past we have been quite willing to accept immigrants to pick our tomatoes and work our fields and pick our grapes and these sort of things. But then we've been, so we welcome them when we need them, and then when we don't, we sort of try to put up the walls. And it's. I have another book on immigration. It's a very complicated issue.
I do see the president, I think, has gotten the attention of Mexican leadership in that.
Yes.
In fact, coming in listening to NPR this morning to work, it talked about how they have been taking steps to secure their southern borders, to stop these Central American, refugees from coming through, because of what a lot of them would do, would come through Mexico and then come to the States. And so they're trying to stem the tide and have made several arrests and deporting them back.
And actually, Mexico does not have as good a record probably on immigration as we do. They don't particularly like immigrants either.
Okay.
So it's
well, they were letting them, it seems like, go right through their country and come to us as long as they kept going. And I think the president called them on it and said, look, we're going to start putting tariffs on you if you don't get your act together and shut down these migrants coming through your country.
It's too bad, and it's a completely different situation, so I don't know if it would work. But it's too bad that we can't do sort of a Marshall Plan for Central America, because there are so many political and economic issues that are involved there that if we could make those areas more tolerable, then it would certainly decrease a lot of the pressure. How do you do
that? I mean, I guess
again,
economic.
Some is economic, but a lot of it is political reform.
Well, what do you do when you have these despots running some of these countries? Do you go in there and take them out, and then of course you break it, you own it, as we've seen in places like Iraq and Iran.
Absolutely.
You take out Saddam Hussein, who was a bad dude, but now, I mean, what replaced him? Ugh. I mean, you can make a good argument that wasn't the best thing to do. So what do you do? Wow. Economics and these leaders and you understand these people leaving, trying to come here. I know we can't just let everyone in, but they're not just crooks and criminals alone. There's some families that are just trying to get away from drug dealers and crime.
The great majority are, they're not rapists and drug dealers and whatever. The great majority are people seeking better lives for themselves. And, sometimes that's economic, but often, there are people who value American freedom.
So the difference, and I thought I'd touch on this. We've seen one debate so far now involving, I guess, 20 Democratic candidates. Two of them had to be separated over 2 days. And, you clearly hear how the Democrats running have a different approach to immigration than President Trump. And there's going to be a real split there, depending for the voters on how they come down, don't you think? And, they're going to want to run on something that can win, but they believe there's support on, everyone agrees on immigration reform. It's how you do it, right?
That's right. And I think Democrats as a whole seem much more willing, for particularly the DACA people, those who came in 16 years or younger, have been here for a number of years, have not committed crimes. For the most part, they're contributing citizens, or they're not citizens, but they're people who, if they were citizens, probably would be able to contribute a lot more than they're able to do now. So that but I think what we're seeing. Remember that there were close to 10 candidates in the Republican side last time, so we're now seeing sort of the mirror image here.
Sure, a bunch in there.
And what's interesting is, in the Republican, the person who shook out was, how do I say it in a diplomatic fashion, was the person who got the most attention to himself. And was the most vocal. I'm not sure he was the most conservative. I think there were actually people, but he sort of took that mantle. And it's quite possible that in the Democratic side that you'll see something sort of the opposite of that those who are best able to appeal to the Democratic base may or may not be the ones that are best able to win the general election. And so you have this sort of conflict between, our heart, Democratic heart maybe is with Warren, or maybe it's with somebody else, but does Biden have a better chance of being able to beat Trump? And I think the fear of those who are supporting Biden is that he could end up being the next Jeb Bush, that he starts out, everybody thinks he's going to be the winner, but then as the debates come on, other people are pushing the buttons that make them respond ideologically. So we will see.
Yeah, and you've already seen some missteps by Biden, it seems like, that come up. And whether, I was just curious, I mean, as President Trump now, is he the oldest? Where does he rank age-wise?
I should know on that, but I don't know.
Okay, but I mean, between him and if he were to be reelected, I think he would be maybe older than Reagan was in that ballpark. And then Bernie Sanders, obviously, is older.
And Biden as well.
Biden. And I kind of had this image. Now, we have our sitting incumbent president who's going to run, but among the Democrats, just looking, I was under the impression that maybe there would be some younger blood coming into the mix. And you heard that in the debate,
as
opposed to going back.
And some of the others.
Is there something to be said for that in terms of maybe appealing to a younger voter one way or the other? Joe Biden's been around a long time.
Sure worked for John Kennedy. Remember, passing the torch to a new generation.
So what do you think? I mean, is it...
Although, look at Beto O'Rourke, does not seem to have been
Right.
at least in my judgment, didn't perform that well in the debate, even though he has that sort of youthful energy. And of course, both can't. I mean, if it ends up being Biden and Trump, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the oldest two people that have ever run
Right.
against. And of course, Hillary Clinton herself was about the same age, maybe even a bit older than Trump. So last election, and that probably hurt. I don't know why it hurt her more than it did Trump, but I think it did.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's interesting to see how this will shake out, because I just remember watching those debates, the Republican debates, the last presidential election, and you could tell. I mean, it was must-watch TV for me, and it was because of Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how many people going in watching thought that he would have a chance one way or the other, but you watched it because, I mean, of the way he attacked the others.
Well,
you
and
had seen
Kamala
nothing,
Harris did,
and it worked. And yeah,
did
and so
that
you wonder,
against Biden
are
this
the
time.
Democrats to some degree, and they haven't gone to the level that President Trump did. I just remember the name calling of Jeb
Right.
Bush and Little Marco
Right.
and all this, and I just wonder though if they'll take a page out of his book, if someone will. And it's hard to imitate the originator one way or the other. Certainly Republicans, I don't think, should try that, because he's the one that does it. What do you think? Could the Democrats take something out of the president's page?
I think they want to probably maintain some contrast to Trump. What was interesting, I think, in the debates, particularly the first one, is Trump wasn't mentioned but a time or two. And maybe that was a good thing, because it's like, this is our product. We'll have time enough later to make a contrast between what we have and what Trump does.
Yeah.
Second debate, you got a little bit more sort of the anti-Trump factor.
Interesting. All right, listen, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, Cindy and others, we'll get to your phone calls, your thoughts on the debate, your thoughts on, by the way, President Trump has raised an awful lot of money.
He has, but so have some of his opponents.
And the opponents have, and maybe not as much as him, but keep in mind there's 20 opponents. If you combine them, it would be similar. But boy, to run for president takes hundreds of millions of dollars. It's incredible.
It's costly.
We'll take a break and be back with your calls right after this.